Right, hi everyone. Hope you've been having a great day so far. I think there have been so many very great sessions, and hopefully this is going to be one of them. And I'm sure there will still be many more after myself. So today I'm kind of giving us a walkthrough on the topic that says you said what, mastering generative orchestration in Copilot Studio. Now, the topic is a bit dramatic, but that was literally my experience when I started working with Copilot Studio. So before we had the Copilot Studio we have today, we had Power Virtual Agents, where everything was very deterministic. It was more like what you see is what you get. More like based on what you've designed, you get the output. So there was no questions about the output you're getting because it was very prescribed. You had all of the control in terms of what the bot says, what the bot does, where the bot gets the data, how the bot responds. You had all the control. But coming to this new world we are in, this new world of LLMs, this new world of agentic AI, some of this control we've had to start, giving that up and letting the AI take over. But as exciting as that is, that also leads to a problem because uh, if you're not careful, you cannot control what the AI does, or you find it hard to control why the AI is saying this. Where did you get your data from? And I've had so many conversations with the AI and say, okay, where did you get that data from? So there are different ways you can actually, take back control of the orchestration, and that's what I'm going to be leading us through today. So I'll say this session is more intermediate rather than beginner, but I'm also starting from like the foundational concepts. So even if you're a beginner, you still have like a solid ground to follow me on this journey. So who am I? My name is Kayode Ajayi. I am a solution architect at Trustmark, and I'm a Microsoft MVP in the business applications category. And yeah, I just got the award this February, so that's really exciting. I'm based in Telford in the United Kingdom, and when I'm not working, I spend time with my family or I just try to learn something. I'm very curious about AI, animation, and video production. So if I'm not working, I might be spending some time on any of those things. So today we're going to, we're going to start with exploring the different Copilot experiences that are available. And I'll say now is almost like everything is called Copilot, right? Even M365 is now called Copilot. So the question is, what Copilot am I even talking about? What are the different Copilot experiences available? So we are going to start our conversation from there. Then we will talk about orchestration. What is orchestration, right? What are the different modes of orchestration available? What tools are available in those different modes of orchestrations? How can you take charge of them? Then we are going to do some demos to illustrate, everything I talked about, and we're going to bring everything together and wrap it up. So yeah, it should be a very concise session, and we're just going to go straight into it. So talking about Copilot experiences, I won't be surprised if there are more than what I've put on the screen, because what I have on the screen now is just what I could bring from memory. But basically, we have Copilot Chat. Now, Copilot Chat is an experience that you see if you go to office.com, for example, right? And well, it's m365.cloud on Microsoft, right? But basically, once you get here to your Office homepage, you see this chat section, and that's Copilot Chat. If you don't have a license, what you get with Copilot Chat is a basic chat experience. So with Copilot Chat, you have that basic experience. We also have Copilot Chat with Work IQ, Copilot in product. So for example, if you open Microsoft Word, you'll see Copilot there. If you open Excel and all the likes, you see Copilot in different products. And even on the Power Platform, you see Copilot. We have Copilot Studio Lite, Copilot Studio full version, and Microsoft Foundry, where things get kind of start getting out of the Copilot realm into the more developer focused realm. So let's just talk about some of them quickly. So Copilot Chat, as I was showing you just now, you see it in your office.com, and it's just this basic chat interface. Now, a few things about Copilot Chat is that, it's just there to give you that basic LLM capability. So, for example, the kind of experience you get when you go to ChatGPT and you just, try to get answers, or you try to do like a web search. So that's just the basic Copilot search. A lot of times you can use it to like draft your emails. And one way I use Copilot a lot these days is, I have an email idea, I write it down, and I say, make this nicer, right? Or, make this professional. So you can use that for email drafting. You can use it for document summarization. You can upload a document, say summarize this document. Say give me the high point, give me the key points in this document, right? Or use this document and give me all the information I need to know, or what do I need to be conscious about. So you can use that because here is just your basic LLM. Now, taking that a step further, we now have the Copilot Chat with Work IQ, and you get this once you start getting that Copilot license. And the key difference of this Copilot Chat with Work IQ is that it's grounded in your organization's data. So, for example, you can say, oh, what was the recent email, or what are the top emails that I need to focus on today? And it's going to go search through your email and give you the response. Or you can say, I've used this one basically to find files, because I can say, oh, what is the file that, Dan sent to me last week, talking about AI? And it's going to look through all the files I have access to and return the answer. So in this case, it is grounded with your organization data, but it still does all of the things that you get with the Copilot Chat. So it does that, but because now it knows who you are, it knows who you work with, it knows the files you have access to, it can basically do much more. Now, taking that a step further, we have Copilot Studio Lite. And there's this conversation about what Copilot to use at any point in time. Now, Copilot Studio Lite, you actually get it from within this same M365 chat interface, and that's what you see over here where you see agents. So with Copilot Studio Lite, you can start creating agents. So this takes it beyond you just going to start a conversation. But in this case, when you're creating those agents, you can actually link them to maybe like a SharePoint folder or a SharePoint site and say, use this to return responses to me. So when I say get me the files I need to focus to, at that point, the agent is not looking at all the files I have access to, is looking at the files that I've grounded the agent with, right? So in Copilot Studio Lite, even from the name, you see it's called Lite, right? So it is a lightweight version. But it's very effective, and I've seen so many use cases where you don't even have to go to the Copilot Studio full version. You can basically get it done in Copilot Studio Lite because it's very powerful too. You have the capabilities of the LLM, and you have control over what the agent does. So you basically use descriptions, and by describing what you want the agent to do, you can use your descriptions to refine it. And the great thing is, once you start creating it, you can start testing it immediately. And if it's not returning the responses you want, you can go back to the design interface and you can, keep on reprompting it. And if I just quickly show you that, so if you come here and you say create agent, it's going to bring that up. And it's going to basically give you like an area or an interface where you can put a description. And by doing that, you can start refining your agent. So you can say describe. If you go to describe, you can just literally type in what the agent should do. I want an agent that can look at my SharePoint files and return responses. So you give it that context, it writes the instructions for you, it writes the descriptions for you. And if you are savvy, you can go ahead and just start writing the instructions yourself. But over here in the knowledge section, I think this is where the power comes into play, because you can come here and decide how your agent gets knowledge, right? So some options you have, you can put specific websites, or you can say search all websites. So basically, once you ask it a query, it can do a web search. Or you can say only use specified sources, and you actually say what sources of data you want to make available to your agent. The downside to this is it has a restricted amount of data sources. So, for example, you can mainly either upload files that you work with, or use things that are in SharePoint. You have a much more limited knowledge source to use. But as I said, in some cases, it's a very powerful tool, depending on the use case. For example, one project that we recently completed was with a legal firm where they had, tens of thousands of documents, of contract documents across several clients across several years. And, we were able to craft the instructions around that and point the agents to the SharePoint file. And literally, once the legal team goes to the chat and they say, "Oh, get me this document or summarize it in this way," it goes ahead, looks through tens of thousands of files and returns the response in under 10 seconds. So it's really that powerful. So even Copilot Studio Lite, don't look at it and say, "Well, this is light, I'm too technical for this." It's beyond that, because with Copilot Studio Lite, you can actually do a whole lot. But you cannot call tools. In terms of governance, you have like limited visibility for governance. So in some cases, an agent might be built in Copilot Studio Lite, but once there's that need for more governance, more visibility, more control, or you want to integrate it with like a wider agent base, you might have to start upgrading that into the Copilot Studio full version. And this topic that we're going through today is really about the full version, because that's what brings generative orchestration, which is a core of what I'm going to be showing us today. But in the Copilot Studio full version, you have like a full canvas. You have so many more knowledge sources to work with, so many more tools to work with. It just gives you so much flexibility when you're creating your agents. Now, you have so many connectors, and as I said, you have that enterprise security governance. You can see what's going on, you can configure things, you can put things in solutions. You have so much control. And in terms of deployment, say you want to build an agent that you embed on your website, you're not going to do that in Copilot Studio Lite, right? Because that's just within the context of your M365. But once you want to start deploying your agents outside of M365 on your website, on an app, on WhatsApp, on Telegram, then you now have to start using the Copilot Studio full version. So this is just showing like some distinctions between the two. You can see the light version, it has the declarative agent. Now it has code interpreter. Now you can create files. You can create Word documents. You can create PowerPoint documents from your Copilot Studio Lite agent. But as I said earlier, you don't have so much control. Even when it comes to the Word document, it's going to be very hard for you to get it to work with consistent templates and things like that. But in Copilot Studio version, you have so much more flexibility and so much more tools to work with. Now, going into the world of Copilot Studio, which I said this topic is really grounded upon, we have two ways that you can build an agent. You can either use the classic orchestration or the generative orchestration. Now, you remember earlier I said before Copilot Studio, we had Power Virtual Agents, and which is the way we've built, bots for so many years. And that uses classic orchestration. And I remember thinking to myself in those days that, this is not AI. We say Power Virtual Agents, we are building AI agents. That's how we market it. But while I say that publicly, internally, I kept thinking to myself, this is not AI, because I'm actually the one telling it everything to do, right? So in the world of classic orchestrations, you have topics, and every topic you have intent. So you are trying to detect the intent. Once you detect what the user is trying to say using natural language processing, you then configure what the agent says. So it was very manual. So think of an FAQ site, for example. There are questions and answers. That's how, the classic orchestration worked then. And it was very manual. And the agent cannot say something that you have not configured it to say. In today's world, that is important, especially when you're working in some areas, maybe legal, you're building like a legal agent. In some cases, you don't want the agent to say something that you don't want it to say, right? But that was the highest you could do with classic orchestration, so it was very limited. But now we have generative orchestration, which brings that power of LLM to your agents. So the agent can create responses by itself, based on the knowledge it has access to, based on the tools it has access to. The agent can begin to do things, and I feel like now we are in that agentic era where it's not just a chatbot now. It's actually an AI entity that you can interact with, that can give you new information, that can help you discover things even about your data. So, but with great power comes great responsibility, right? Now the agent can do all of those things, but how about your guardrails? Now, Alex made mention of, you know, the BMW agent. I also heard of an agent, not sure if it's the BMW one, that promised someone and said, I'm going to give you a free car. Now, that could easily become a very big legal problem, because I've come to BMW, I've chatted with BMW, and the agent has promised me a free car. I should definitely get my free car. So, but the agent had probably done that based on, it had the knowledge of different things and it has given that recommendation. But that's not what, BMW wanted. So, the big picture of how we actually go forward now is a mixture of both, where you maximize your generative orchestration, but you can still have some of that classic feel when you want it, so you keep the control when the AI is making a lot of decisions by itself. So in classic orchestrations, we have topics with trigger phrases. That's how the agent detects what the user is trying to say. We have different nodes, which we are going to see briefly. You use conditions, entities, variables, actions, and top system topics, right? So these are the things that make up your agents when we were doing it just with a per virtual agent. But now in the world of generative orchestration, we have much more. We have knowledge. So rather than me, being the one telling the agent, if a user asks for machines, you know, say this, go and fetch the data and tell the user this, instead of me giving the agent all of that instruction step by step, I can just tell the agent, this is the list of machines, answer the user query whenever the user asks. And the user can just come, ask what machines are available, and the agent goes, gets the data, and presents it to the user. So that's the power of knowledge. We have topics. Now we have topics, but it's a bit different. Previously we just used to do trigger phrases, but now you can give descriptions of what this topic should be. So now topics is not just seen as a conversational node, is now seen as a tool. So the agent can call topics whenever you need it, and we'll see an example of that shortly. In the world of AI, your instructions and descriptions drive everything, right? And that's where prompt engineering comes in. And I'll tell you a little bit about that too. So, because the agent is actually watching your instructions, is looking at the different descriptions, and that's how it's using to decide what it is. So, for example, if I have a data source, a knowledge that holds tables, for example, and in my description, I tell the AI, this knowledge source holds a list of cars. Now, when the AI is trying to make a decision, if somebody asks about cars, it's going to fetch that knowledge source, because you have to given it a description and said, this table is for cars, and the AI will try to make sense out of that and probably mess it up. So your instructions and descriptions are like your first level of, gaining control of this LLM capability. Apart from that, we have our variables, input and output variables, which are very important, because if you have a variable as an input to a topic, the topic cannot run until that variable is passed to the topic. And that is a very easy way for you to get the LLM to ask the user. So maybe you have a topic that says, maybe create a restaurant booking request. And for the restaurant booking request, you need to have the name of the person and how many people are coming. Now, if you make that an input variable to the topic, if somebody comes and say, I want to make a restaurant request, the AI will try to call that topic, but once the AI realizes that, oh, I don't have the name and the name is a required variable, it prompts the user by itself and say, please provide the name, how many people are coming. It does all of that by itself without you going to prompt it. And we have the generative answers node, which is very powerful. You can use it to kind of prompt your agents from within the agent and control how your conversation goes. We have tools also, custom prompts, agent flows, connectors, MCP. We won't go into all of them today, but these are all powerful tools available. And behind the scenes we have our models, and you can choose different models. And I think even now you can build a model in AI Foundry and use it from within your agent. So there's so many models available for you to use. Now, we're going to go into the demo, and we're going to quickly, I have a clock at my front also, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm, on time. But we're going to quickly talk about 4 different scenarios. So we'll start from the classic orchestration. How did we used to do this, in the old days, right? We'll talk about generative orchestration. Now, which is, generative orchestration is already powerful. Now, we'll now see generative orchestration plus MCP. If you're around this space, you've probably seen stuff MCP this, MCP that. Now, you will see how powerful MCP is. And, we will also see hybrid orchestration, which is, where I believe especially when you're building complex AI agents, you're going to have a mix of generative orchestration, and you're still going to want to implement that classic feel, so you can kind of have the best of both worlds. So I'm going to jump into Copilot Studio here, and just to start, I have a table which I've created this morning using Copilot. So I just told Copilot I need a table. I described what the table should have, what should contain, and it's created this for me. And I also told it, populate it with 200 records, and it's done that for me. So that's Copilot within Dataverse itself. So now I have my table. So it's a table of enterprise requests. So basically this system is for people to make requests within an organization for solutions they want to create. So maybe to the IT team, for example, they can say, oh, I want to create an app for onboarding staff, and they submit a request, and they can come back and check the status of their request. So now starting with the classic orchestration. Now this one, and how do you make an agent classic orchestration or generative orchestration? Now, once you've created your agent, if you come over here to settings, you will see this generative AI tab, and there is an option here that says orchestration. So what orchestration mode are you using for this agent? Now, by default, it is yes for generative AI. So by default, Microsoft is trying to encourage you to, go on to generative AI. So it's on by default. But over here, I've come in here to change it to no. And here you see here it says use classic orchestration, limiting responses to the context and behavior defined by your agent's topic. So in classic orchestration is really topic driven, right? So it's very manual. You are telling it, so whatever knowledge you want to have, you are literally typing it into your topic, and your agent is just very robotic, really. It's just like saying, if the user says this, you say this. If the user says that, you say that. So it gets very repetitive quickly. So that's how you make it, classic orchestration. Now, let's see what our topic look like. So in this agent, I've created a topic that says check request status. Now, what we see on the screen here are what we call nodes, right? Now, this is a trigger node that just tells us the trigger phrases. I talked about that. So basically, what are the kind of things the user would say? And I'll say previously, this was the biggest LLM because it was using NLP. So the user didn't have to type this exactly. but it will still detect it based on the natural language processing. So it does that. It asks the user provide the description. It goes ahead. Now it does an actual search of the database. You can see here we've provided the action itself, and it does a condition to say, okay, is any result returned? If it's not returned, say request not found. If there's a result returned, now just say here is your request. So let's test this out now. So I will say, and let me just check for a valid request description here. So we have upgrade APIs. So let me just say, what's the status of upgrade APIs? Okay, so let's see, of upgrade APIs, no knowledge, this classic orchestration. Let's see, did I turn that off? 1 second. Oh, the demo gods are here. Let's try that again. Maybe I say request status this time. What's the request status of upgrade APIs? Okay, so let me do this. So let's say check request status. Now, check request status, you see, even I tried to ask it a smart question, what's the status of upgrade APIs? And it couldn't even answer that question, right? So that's how limiting classic orchestration is. So now I've said check request status is able to trigger into that. Now it's asking me for the description. Why is it asking me for the description? Because I told it to ask me for the description. So there's no intelligence here. So I've provided the description, upgrade APIs. It goes ahead, it checks, and it's come back and say, okay, well, this is a new request, so it's not yet in progress. So that's classic orchestration, very manual. Very quickly, I'll jump into generative orchestration here. So I have this other agent. For this one, I've turned on generative orchestration, and you see that over here. You can see it's set to yes. We have some other settings that are available, so you can decide to use general knowledge. In many cases, I like to turn this off because, that it could just come up with stuff that don't exist if you have general knowledge available. And especially in Copilot Studio, you really want to control all of that. So in a lot of cases, you're going to be turning this off. You can say use information from the web. Maybe you wanted to do some web search to find the information. I've done an agent that required, searching for competitor information and, bringing all of that data back. So in that case, you want to turn on use information from the web. In this case, I don't want that. You can choose to use files, code interpreter, very powerful. You can have all of those things. I'm just going to leave it like this now. And let's go back and test our agent. So back in the agent now.
Does AI work?
Yes, it is. Okay. So now looking at how do we put this together? Previously where we had topics and it was the topic we used to design it. In this case, I've not created any custom topic. But what have I done instead? I've come here and I've given it an instruction. Now I've said, when the user asks about project risk, or which enterprise requests appear risky, your goal is to identify and explain any request that presents elevated concern. Use enterprise request records. Now that's the table. So within my prompt, I'm telling it what to use. So talking about prompt engineering, there is goal, context, source, and expectation. So goal is what do you want the agent to do. Context is what within what context, what are the restrictions. The source is what data source should it be looking for, and the expectation is how do you want your response to look like, how do you want to format it. So all of that is present in this instruction here. So it says use enterprise request record as your only source of information. Evaluate risk by considering multiple attributes together using risk level, estimated budget, and all of that. Only use data retrieved from the enterprise request table. Do not invent, assume, or fabricate information. If insufficient data exists, clearly state that. In your response, identify any risky request and the likes. So we've done that. another thing we've done is we've given it a knowledge source, which is that Dataverse table I created. And literally that's all I've done on this agent. So let's give it a query. Let's say, which enterprise requests look risky and why? Now I've given it a prompt. Now if you look at the way this prompt is not as manual as we did in classic orchestration. In classic orchestration, we had to specify what we wanted. It's not reasoning, right? It's very deterministic. But in this case, we are relying on the agent to actually do some reasoning, because we've said where the risks are high. How does it know what the risks are high? We have already given it that definition in the instruction. So we've told it what to consider when thinking about a risk being high or not. And it has gone ahead, looked at our data source, and it has returned this result, based on the data available, and it has told us why. Here you see it has given it a table, because I actually said include a comparison table which includes the request description of the top 3 records worthy of note, and it has actually done that and returned the information. So with this, we start getting the power of that generative orchestration. But now let's try something else. Now say I want to create a new request. So if I come here and I say create a new request, HR needs a Power App or for leave request, budgets, blah blah blah. So I want you to create a new request. Now in this case, because I've not provided it any tool, right now it's just trying to, you can see what it's doing here is just searching the knowledge sources, right? Okay, so here it says it cannot be directly created through this channel. And why can't it do that? Because it doesn't have any tool available. So how can we make that better? Now we have something called MCP, which is very powerful. Now you remember how in the first one we had to call an action manually. So in this case we are listing roles. We can definitely use this to create a record, but we will need to add another action for creating the record. If you want to delete a record, you will need to add another action for deleting the record, and that gives you a lot to do. Now MCP takes all of that away. Now what have I done differently in this case? I have my instruction, but in addition to the previous instruction, I have an additional instruction that says when the user requests to create or submit a new request, extract the relevant details from the conversation and map them to the enterprise request schema. If sufficient information is available, call the create enterprise request tool to create the record. The record should be created in the enterprise request table. Do not fabricate missing or required information. If required fields are missing, ask the user for clarification before calling the tool. After creating the record, confirm the request title and generate request ID. This is so powerful. We've just literally typed in what you should do. What else have we done? We still have the knowledge, but in addition to that, we've given it the Dataverse MCP server. Now, the Dataverse MCP server knows how to do everything about Dataverse. So if I want to create a record, it knows how to do it. If I want to view records, it knows how to do it. If I want to delete a record, it knows how to do it. So in this case, I've added just one tool rather than many, many tools. So let's try that request again. So if I say, create a new request, HR needs a Power App for leave requests, budget is that, and medium risk. So let's see what happens and watch this. So now it calls the Dataverse MCP server. In this case, because I'd given it, okay, so it says the enterprise request entity was not found in the system. So for that, I think if I come to the instructions, what I might have to do is provide it the actual table internal name, the logic name. So I'll just quickly update that. I've copied the logic name, and rather than say this, let me provide the logic name, and fingers crossed that gives us the result. So I'll do a new test session and I'll try that prompt again. Okay, so now it's called the MCP server. It looks like it's trying to create a record. Now remember how I said the MCP server knows all the different tools. So even though I added just the MCP server for Dataverse, now when it wanted to create a record, it called the create record tool by itself. When it wanted to describe the table, it called it by itself. And now it's actually gone ahead. It says your request has been successfully submitted, and it's giving me that summary all by itself based on the instructions. And now you can see it's giving me a request ID. If I come to my table, I should actually see that data that it has created. So if we come here, you'll see that HR needs a Power App for leave request. So it has gone ahead and done that, which is very powerful, and that's generative AI in action. So now our agents are smart. They are not just robotic, but they can actually reason through stuff, and they can do things much more powerfully. And if you see how we've put this together, as much as powerful as it is, we've done just literally three things. But how can we take it a step further? So in this case, the AI is doing all of this. But what if we still want to keep that control? So maybe before providing a response, we want the AI to maybe, within a legal framework, you need to do confirmation sometimes to confirm that yes, you accept the risk. So maybe we want something like that. So we're still using the AI, but we still want some things to be like manual and configured. So we want to use topics for some things. How can we do that? Well, you can do it. So for this hybrid one, I've kept the same agent, everything the same, but I've just tweaked it a little bit. So let's read the new instruction. So when the user requests to create, so all of that still stays the same. If sufficient information is available, say the compulsory message using, then here I've tagged a topic. So in this case, before the AI responds, there's a compulsory message it must say. Now, I've said, use this topic. Now, in this case, I've said compulsory message, but in your case, it might be a confirmation. So, use it, say it using this topic. Now, what does the topic contain? If I come to that topic, you see it just contains, once it is detected, and for this, I've given it a description. Remember, I talked about description. So I said this tool. So now our topic, we are now referring to our topic as a tool, right? So it's not just detecting trigger phrases anymore. Now it is a tool, and you can see this trigger says the agent chooses. So the agent is the one that decides when this topic is relevant based on this description. So here we've said this tool can handle queries like this: enterprise request, message, show compulsory message. So when the agent needs to show compulsory message, it just checks what tool do I have available for that. Oh, this is one, and it goes ahead and does that. And in this case, I've just said this is a compulsory message. So let's do something now. Let us now come here and say create a request. So let me put this here. So create a request titled Copilot Agent for IT Help Desk. Keep it low risk, internal, and data only. So let me send this. Now, if you look at the activity here, it started by trying to call the server, but remember that we already told it, say a compulsory message. So it went into the topic, got that whatever the topic was designed to do. It goes ahead and does that. Once it's completed that, it goes back to creating the record and does all of that. And now we can see the confirmation that the record has been created. If I come back here and I refresh, I should see that record that has been created too. So I'm just going to scroll to and here we can see Copilot Agent for Help Desk. So this is how you can actually, bring back that control into your generative orchestration. And let me just do another one to see, some of the power of this agent. So if I come here and I say new test session, in this case, I've said create a request for marketing. So there's so many things missing from this query right now. So let's see what the agent does. So here I've said create an agent for marketing. Okay, well, it just went ahead to create it. Well, I guess because from the table we've not set those fields as required fields. But if we've set the other fields as required fields, it's actually going to prompt us and ask for that information, before it goes ahead to create a request. So that's really the demo. I hope, it's giving you more insight to, the different orchestration methods and how you can actually use them. So, as I said, we're going to have the best of both worlds. You use classic, well, I call it classic, it's still generative as you've seen, but we are using topics, right? So we are using that when, compliance matters, when we need things to follow a specific step by step process, right? Because that's where topics are powerful. But let's rely on generation where we need reasoning, where we need interpretation, where we need that flexibility. I tried building an agent recently, and well, not recently, but in the early days of Copilot Studio, and I first tried generative, and it just wasn't behaving nicely. I had to go back, build it with classic, but it was still limiting. Then I had to go back to generative and try to, bring it together, which is how, I've discovered some of these things that I've showed today. So you said what? The question is no longer can the AI answer, but is, are you able to take charge of that orchestration and help guide the AI to give that consistent result you want? So, if you have any questions, I understand I have like 2 minutes, but I'll just scan through this slide onto the final slide. So, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And thanks, Jimmy, for the opportunity.
Man, that was brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah, that was very engaging, and I like the way you just captured like
Yeah,
both,
cool.
you know, whether it's classic or generative,
Yeah,
obviously showing us examples as well.
yeah.
Well done. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jimmy. So,
Any other question
any
from the floor?
question?
So yeah, we'll take a lunch break now, and we'll come back at 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, we'll be looking at will be Andrea will be speaking to us. On until then, I hope you guys will also rejoin, and yeah, thank you so much.
All
Have
right.
a
Thanks,
nice
everyone.
lunch, everyone.
Cheers.